Hello and welcome to another Arsecast Extra, as always, with James from Gunnerblog. James, good morning to you.
Good morning, Andrew. How you doing this morning?
I'm all right, thanks. I'm all right. Had a fairly chilled out weekend. Didn't do anything too exciting or interesting. Went to the cinema yesterday.
To see?
Furiosa.
Oh, yeah. Is it good?
I mean, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine.
Not as good as Fury Road?
I don't think it is. There seemed to be more of a point to Fury Road. Like there was a sense of, you know, peril and jeopardy and things like that about the story, whereas this seems to be lacking that. And the lad who's Thor, what's his name? Chris
Hemsworth. Hemsworth, I forget.
His character seems a bit muddled to me. Starts off one way, goes a different direction. It's all a bit, I don't know what this guy's supposed to be, really.
Okay.
But, you know.
But entertaining.
Entertaining if you switch your brain off.
Sure. Cars in the desert. It looks pretty, I imagine.
Yeah, you know, there's that bit where they have to throw it in. I think it's legally required in any Mad Max type film where there's a guy strapped to the front of an articulated lorry playing an electric guitar.
Oh, they fit that in, did they?
Yeah, it's in there. It's brief, but it's in there. You know, so if that's what you're looking for from a movie, a guy playing guitar while hurtling along a desert highway on the front of a lorry, it has a little bit of that for you.
I went about a week ago to the cinema to see the Planet of the Apes film. The Kingdom of the Land of the Planet of the Apes, or whatever it's called.
Right, I didn't even know there was a new one out.
It's the first of a sequel trilogy to a prequel trilogy.
Oh, God, is it like... I mean, this is the thing with movies these days. You've got to get the origin story of the prequel for the sequel for the series of mega prequels, you know.
It's too much commitment required.
Yeah.
But I did enjoy it. I mean...
Right.
Camille and I went together and we we went to watch the original trilogy, not the original trilogy, sorry, the reimagined trilogy with Andy Serkis when we were sort of first together. And she always used to forget what it was called, and she just used to call it the Monkey Program. Should we go and see the Monkey Program? So we went to see the Monkey Program.
Okay.
And as Monkey Programs go, it's quite good. It's not as good as some of the other monkey programs, but there've been a lot of monkey programs made.
There are just too many, aren't there? There are too many. As soon as like one thing gets good or big, they have to make like loads of them.
Yeah.
Like the three, and then you've got to go back. It's like Batman. How many fucking times do we need to see how Batman came to be? You know what I mean?
We've got to let everyone have a go at being Batman. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Every actor gets their chance.
One day it will be yours, James.
Oh, I'm waiting. I'm waiting.
You will be Batman.
I know what you mean. And actually, obviously, the central conceit of the Planet of the Apes movies is that you've got a load of humans pretending to be monkeys, right, via CGI. They're not monkeys, I know that. They're great apes, but I'm just being silly. And obviously, Serkis is like the master, right? Because he played Gollum, a role I gather he's reprising soon.
They're making another one, are they? Like, the fucking Gollum origin story. Even though we got that in the original movies, we found out, didn't we? He was just a little nice guy, and then he got corrupted by the ring. Yeah,
I know. Yeah. Well, they're going deeper into it. They're bringing Viggo Mortensen back as well. Anyway, Serkis has done that. He was King Kong. He was. I forget what he's called in Planet of the Apes. Caesar, maybe? Something like that. Right. He's like the main monkey in Monkey Program. So he's the expert, and I noticed in the credits, actually, he's a special consultant. So I imagine he comes in for a day and is like, this is how to walk like a monkey.
Yeah.
To embarrass Camille, I left the cinema in the style of a monkey, like hobbling down the aisle and beating my chest and stuff. She was absolutely mortified.
I don't blame her one bit.
It's weird how when I'm embarrassing someone else, I get completely like I have no embarrassment at all. Do you know what I mean? It's like as long as they're mortified, I feel nothing.
Your job is done.
Yeah. But other than that, I mean, that was last week. I couldn't tell you what I did this weekend.
Right.
Not because it's top secret, just because It was uneventful.
He looks a little too much like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, doesn't he, Andy Serkis?
He does, yeah. He's going to actually play Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in a motion capture suit.
The origin story.
The origin story of the baby. It's called Baby-Faced Assassin. And he's going to be wearing the suit with the ping pong balls on to recapture Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's movements. He's been studying for years.
Right. I look forward to not watching that in the cinema. I certainly won't be going to see that or the origin story. Do you know what I was just watching though before we started recording was the overlap. And look, I don't want to have on my conscience me inflicting Gary Neville on anyone. I don't, in good faith, want to tell someone to go and watch anything with Gary Neville. Right?
No one wants that.
People will understand, that I'm pretty much opposed to him and it on every level, right? But they have Patrick Vieira on with Roy Keane, Jamie Carragher, Gary Neville, and of course Ian Wright. And it is a good watch, I have to say. It's quite interesting, and Vieira's interesting. I was just watching the bit where they were doing the tunnel thing. They were reliving that moment in the tunnel when Vieira had a go at Neville, and then Roy Keane decided to stick up for Neville in the tunnel in that game at Highbury, which didn't end that well for us, if I remember correctly. But it's an interesting watch. It is an interesting watch.
Yeah, they're good. I've got no skin in the game. The overlap have dumped me. They've upgraded to Clive Palmer. We all know that. But I do think their programmes are generally pretty good. They did a good episode last week, actually, where they sort of did like a myth-busting.
I watched that one as well.
Yeah, and Ian Wright told the story about being caught by Arsene Wenger rollerblading around the marble halls and knowing that was the moment his Arsenal career was probably over. Yeah, I don't know what Mikel would make of that either. I don't know if it quite fits the criteria of the non-negotiables, but there you go.
Yeah, I would imagine no rollerblading indoors is pretty high.
That was the problem with Nicola Pepe, of course, that he was always skateboarding around London Colney.
Maybe that's what it was. Yeah, but it's a good watch. It's a good watch, and Roy Keane is funnier than you would have expected. Having watched quite a few of these, his sense of humor is, I connect with it. I don't know what it is.
Well, I think as well, to give him some credit, I think he's not unaware of his own persona. Do you know what I mean? So I think he plays on that and with that quite effectively. And I think he can send himself up a bit as well, which
he does.
Is good. They are, they are entertaining. If you can stomach Gary's presence on them, they are entertaining.
Yes, yeah. That is the challenge, but it is a good watch. So I'll watch the rest of that a little bit later on.
I'm looking forward to it actually. Yeah, Vieira's always good value. I saw a clip today, just on Twitter, where he was talking about how I think they asked him which one out of you and Keane got the most bookings, and he said me because United controlled all the referees.
Yeah. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. You can tell these home truths now a little way down the line.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all fine to talk about now. No one will have corrected him, I'm sure.
No. So there's not a lot going on, is there? Really, from an Arsenal perspective, there is very little. In fact,
no, very little.
Everything's being geared up for the Euros. Not a great weekend for Gareth Southgate's beige cardigan army.
Not a great weekend, not a great result, not a great performance.
Did you watch it?
I watched the first half and then I got on with my life, I think, as I recall. It wasn't great. Aaron Ramsdale started and was beaten about 10 minutes into the game, and that was the only goal in it as Iceland picked up what will be, I guess, a pretty famous victory. Iceland have had some good results in recent years, including against England, but a win at Wembley, that'll be right up there. Not a good final piece of preparation for England.
To what extent do you think those warm-up games are actually important or meaningful? Because I wrote in the blog this morning about William Saliba, and there was a tweet he did this, 95% pass completion, won all his duels, but France drew 0-0 with Canada. And with all due respect to our Canadian friends and listeners, that might not be considered a great result in France, right?
No.
But does it make any real difference when you go into a tournament? Do the players, will they carry that into these games in any way? Or do you think this is just like, well, that didn't go as well as we'd like, we'll have to do a bit better in our first game against whoever it is? Who are England playing in their first game?
Great question. It's on Sunday, which is also my birthday, by the way, just for people who are wondering. I'm saying that because I'm filling as I
desperately look for
Google what the England fixtures are. Serbia, that's it. Yeah, because the commentators kept saying, the Serbian coach will be watching this with interest, as England sort of struggled to break down Iceland. That said, I kind of think it probably doesn't matter all that much. I mean, ultimately, tournaments are about getting results, maybe even more so than performances. And Southgate, for all the criticism of him, much of which has been justified, has largely managed to do that. I also think the starting 11 will be quite different. I mean, Jude Bellingham only sort of, I think, joined training on Saturday, having taken part in the Champions League final, so he's not been available. Bukayo Saka only played 20 minutes. I think has only trained 2 or 3 times himself with England. Not that you know that from some of the back pages. And then, I think there are other players who may come into the team, be that, I don't know, a Conor Gallagher or someone like that to give a bit of steel in midfield. So I think it will be a very different game, but not the ideal preparation. The Saliba one is interesting. I was sort of watching the reports out of the French media last night. As you wrote in your blog today, Deschamps, he's never particularly fancied Saliba, has he? Like, he's never really...
It's weird.
Been effusive in his praise of him and not really selected him. And actually, I sort of saw that mirrored among the French press. A lot of people saying, until now, he hasn't really performed in a France shirt at the level that we've seen of him in an Arsenal shirt.
Sure.
Though apparently last night against Canada, he looked himself, right? He looked the Saliba that we're accustomed to seeing for Arsenal. So the interesting thing is whether or not it's kind of too late to disrupt Deschamps' pecking order. I think he goes with Konate and Upamecano generally. And it's whether or not he's prepared to disrupt that, what are we, 7 days out from their first game? Yeah.
Well, we had the discussion about him last week as to whether or not we want him to play for France, and I think we both agreed that we would like to see him play. It just strikes me that if you are, coaches have their own preferences, and you can respect that or not respect that, but I think you have to understand it at least. It just strikes me that if Saliba gets into the France team, he's not coming out of it. But it's whether or not he can make that breakthrough, or whether or not Deschamps will compromise on what he thinks about the other two. So it's a bit of a weird one. But he's probably the best central defender in the Premier League, and yet he's not going to be in the France team. Maybe, there's something about that partnership for France that's really good. I don't pay enough attention to France's games or results or performances to really say that, but maybe that's what's in Deschamps' mind, that partnership is what he considers the most solid.
Maybe, and they used to play together at Red Bull, so they have a really good understanding, Upamecano and Konate. But Upamecano's had a really difficult season. I think he dropped out of the Bayern team for Eric Dyer, no less, which tells you how things were going for him. And I mean, Saliba's obviously the best individual, I think, among the three. I know Konate, when fit, had some good games this season, including a really good game against us at Anfield. But yeah, I mean, listen, Konate and Saliba looks like a great partnership. So they played half an hour together against Canada. Maybe they'll get more during the Euros. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have a feeling about Saliba that it might be one of those where he starts the tournament out of the team, but if they have a shaky performance or drop points, it wouldn't surprise me if he's in by the end.
No. We had a question. You mentioned Bukayo Saka, and we obviously had a question because there was a lot going on this weekend in terms of the press coverage of England's defeat to Iceland. And Bukayo Saka came on with about 25 minutes to go. Yet he was front and center on the back pages as the tabloid headlines criticised England's defeat to Iceland. And JMart91 said, "Morning, do you ever worry for the mental health of players like Saka after the use of his image as the face of a loss for England? I still remember the hate from 3 years ago, and he gets shit from pundits." Weird clip of Kevin Kilbane. Did you see that doing the rounds?
Don't think I have actually, Andrew. What
he sort of makes this gag about how Bukayo Saka will limp off, and then people will be saying,
I have seen that. Watch out for him going off injured with 70 minutes to go and then being fit for the next game.
Yeah, and will he make it, will he not? And then, of course, he's in the team as if this is something that happens routinely, and I think you can count on one hand the amount of times Bukayo Saka has actually been taken off because he's been injured or anything else. So it's all a bit strange.
And he cut it fine, Saka. This injury that he had that kept him out the final day. I mean, I think we knew to keep him out the final day, it had to be pretty bad.
Of course.
And it got pretty close to the wire with England in terms of him being able to prove he was going to be ready for the tournament. It is a bit cruel, I think, to then sort of make jokes about that. But there you go.
Yeah. So, I mean, what about that sort of press coverage? Is this something that he is going to have to contend with? Do you think? I mean, personally, I think while it's obviously wrong to put him front and center in that context, if you've only played 25 minutes and other players, have done more or not done as much in the 90 minutes that they've played, do you worry for Saka in that sense? Or do you think what we've seen from him in the last number of years suggests that this, while obviously unpleasant, isn't something that's going to have an impact on him on a personal level?
Well, I think he's incredibly resilient, as you suggest, and I think he's a star, and some of this is what comes with being a star. He's a name and a face that probably sells papers, and I don't doubt that's a factor in the kind of editorial decision to use his image. It was interesting. I raised this obviously with The Athletic and spoke to a couple of journalist friends about it as well, because I saw the same images as everyone else on social media, back page after back page with Bukayo on it. And I think, in fairness, I think a lot goes into those decisions, and part of it is just it's a good picture. I mean, Saka happened to be on the floor at full time. It's a good picture. He happened to throw a paper aeroplane back at the crowd. It made for a good picture. So that's the sort of defense, right? Oh, it was the best photograph on the day. Now, I think there are two things that you have to say in response to that. One is a kind of editorial question, as you suggest, of, well, is he really the face of this defeat? Is he really the face of this result? It may be a good picture, but does it tell the story of the game? I would argue no, given that he came on for 20 minutes. I think a picture of, say, Gareth Southgate would have been infinitely more appropriate. And then I think there's a second point, which is, even if it is the best picture, even if he is a big star, even if we do think it will sell papers, do we as media have an obligation to be more conscious and more responsible in our choices about which image we use on a back page? And particularly some very clumsy headlines. I mean, there were a couple of headlines in there that I thought at best were clumsy, at worst were worse than that.
Yes.
And I think that we do. I think we do have a responsibility to think about the implications, the messaging of selecting certain players, and attaching them to these negative headlines. So I don't really think it's a good enough excuse to be like, well, it was a good picture.
Yeah.
I think we need to think about it a bit more than that and think about the kind of social implications beyond that.
Yes.
Especially given what happened as you say, at Euro 2020.
Well, that's exactly it. I can't add anything more to what you've said there. I think it's absolutely right. There is a responsibility to think about how you present whatever story you present, however you write it, however you show it as a headline or as a picture. There is more than ever a responsibility to think about the wider context and the world that we live in and the society that we live in, and what those images and what those headlines might say. On many levels. So I think you're absolutely right in that sense. We do have a couple of questions about Bukayo Saka here. So moving on to make it a bit more football-y. Wise Marklar says, what are your thoughts on Saka potentially being used in different positions? Do we need to mix it up in order not to become too predictable? And Nick Caprara, I think it is. I should get my glasses on to have a look at this. Yes, Nick Caprara, also on the Discord. Would a signing like Olise allow Saka to become the mythical left-sided 8 we've been searching for?
Yeah, I saw those questions. I mean, my sort of instant gut reaction is that instinctively I want to say that ship has sailed. Like I kind of felt like there was a time we might be moving towards that, and I'm not sure anymore. I think he's excelling so much and producing such brilliant numbers in that right-sided role that I kind of think he's made himself indispensable almost. But then I look at him and I think, well, he's still only 22, and that there may be other gears for him to go to. There may be further developments in his game, and maybe a kind of positional flexibility could be part of that. I think on balance, I think I'll stick with my sort of initial thought, which is that he has become so outstanding as that wide right player that I think he's not for moving. And even with England, Cole Palmer has arguably had one of the outstanding seasons of any English player, but I don't think he's going to get into Saka's spot. I think Phil Foden might end up having to play from the left in this tournament because I don't think he's taking Saka's spot. And I suspect it will be a similar situation at Arsenal. But what do you think?
I mean, I think he's good enough. I definitely think he's good enough to play in different positions and, playing a bit more centrally. I think it's well within his wheelhouse to do that. But like you, I'm sort of, when a player does what he does in that position at his age and produces the numbers that he produced last season, 20 goals and 14 assists, I think it is, in all competitions at 22 years of age, those numbers are incredible. And there was a conversation, conversations were happening last week about player of the season and who should it be. And what's amazing about this Arsenal team is that you could easily say Odegaard, who won it, Declan Rice, who was second, William Saliba, who was third. Like, Bukayo Saka not getting into the top 3 of Arsenal's player of the season vote by fans, given how much he is loved by fans and cherished by Arsenal fans, tells you so much about the quality of players that we've got and the quality of the performances that we have delivered this season.
Yeah.
But I think it also does him a little bit of a disservice as well, because those numbers have just been brilliant. And I think what's sort of amazing is when you think about Saka's season and you look at the numbers, you look at the stats, and they really are excellent. But at the same time, you're thinking, did he really play at his best for long periods? It's kind of bonkers, isn't it, that he can produce that. And still, you might be thinking to yourself, well, I don't know if he played as well as he can play. And that's what he does. It's amazing, I think. So what he can produce in that position is probably more valuable than an experiment to move him inside. Even if I think absolutely he could play as the left 8. 100%. I think he could do that. He could also play, obviously, on the other side as a winger on the left if he wanted to, or if Mikel Arteta wanted him to. He can play on the right. We know he's played left back. If you wanted to play him maybe where Odegaard plays, if he can play left 8, I don't know why he couldn't play where Odegaard plays. I'm not saying he would do it the same way or be as good, but he could definitely do it. I think the technical quality is there, but I think he's just sort of performed at such a level in one position. It would be like, well, why would you change it? Why wouldn't you just find someone else to play in the other positions?
Yeah, and listening to those numbers that he's produced, and also seeing his game this season and some of the positions he has adopted, I wonder if the question is almost the wrong one. Should we be looking to get him closer to goal than further away? Can he, in the mould of Mohamed Salah, say, become a player who adopts more central attacking positions, who is getting into the penalty box more regularly, arriving around the penalty spot? Can he become a guy who, although starting from the right, is a pure goal threat and occasionally, make those runs through the middle of the pitch? I think that maybe is a more logical development for him, given the numbers that he's already producing. And
what he's capable of in front of goal, the range of finishes, left foot, right foot. Scored one or two with his head. Did he last season as well, if I remember? So,
yeah, I think that is actually the next step for Saka. I mean, obviously he had an outstanding, brilliant season last season. How many goals did you say it was in all?
20 goals.
20 goals. Well,
not including internationals.
Bukayo Saka being, and I know there are a few penalties in there, but Bukayo Saka being Bukayo Saka, I think he'll be looking at that and saying, I want 25, I want 30.
Yeah.
And I honestly think at his age, at this point in his development, there's no reason to think he can't do that. Really, you make a great point about player of the season, and he could be in contention, because when I saw him finish the season with the numbers he did, I found myself asking, well, how far can this guy go? How big can he go? And I don't think we really know. And that's incredibly exciting.
Yeah, it really is.
Have you remembered, by the way, Andrew, that we promised that we would do our transfer prediction?
James, apart from going to the cinema, I spent all weekend, with a pad and
even during the film, there's like some rustling happening. What's that noise? It's you getting your pad out, scribbling away, doing sums.
Exactly. I'm well prepared for this.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I remembered about
3 seconds ago?
8 minutes before we started recording, I would say. When I was like, what can we talk about on the podcast? I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've got to do that. But maybe we'll leave that for the start of part 2.
Okay.
Because we've got another few.
It's good to trail it, though. Keep people waiting.
And give us some time to think about what we're going to
exactly.
generate.
Stick with us. Elsewhere, then, some of our players did a bit better on international duty than poor old Bukayo. Kai Havertz scored again.
Good.
Did you see the goal? A really nice goal, actually.
I don't think I did.
It was against Greece. Like a really nice sort of touch inside the box, spin and shot. I thought it was a good goal. And Gabriel Martinelli as well.
Yes, I saw that.
Scored for Brazil against Mexico.
That's good.
It is good. It would be great if he could have a good summer, wouldn't it? I think there's a few questions over him and his form last season. And a good spell with Brazil. I know he's playing in a part of the pitch where there's a huge amount of competition. But if he can make an impact with them, it could do him the world of good. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, we had a question, Michael Powell on Twitter, who's kapowled, who says, do you have any fear of Martinelli getting left behind as the team evolves? He hasn't hit the heights he should be hitting and doesn't get to play the same way he used to. I mean, can you compartmentalize a season like the one he's had, where he was maybe a bit underwhelming, where he didn't have the end product we were looking for? And I think it's also fair to say that he had an injury, which didn't do much good. That injury picked up against Brentford, maybe? I can't remember who it was, but Sheffield United, perhaps. I can't quite remember. But, it is, I think if we're sitting here this time next year and we're discussing an underwhelming season for Gabriel Martinelli, then I start to get a little bit worried and concerned. But, at 22, 23, I think it's not abnormal for a player to just sort of plateau a little bit and then, kick on again next season.
It used to be sort of quite a known and discussed phenomenon, didn't it? I feel like often in players' development, we'd say, oh, this is kind of their second year syndrome, or a time where they've just plateaued. And I feel like maybe that's less discussed now. Almost people like Saka, their remarkable consistency has kind of damaged that truism a little bit. But I think it is perfectly normal. I am a little bit worried in answer to the question, just because I suppose it's just, your nature as a fan. You have these high hopes for players, and when they don't necessarily reach them, you think, what's going to be the next step in his development? And I think he has got a bit of a point to prove next season. But I believe in the potential. I believe that there's still a lot there. I just think he needs to find a way of delivering it more consistently. And I think the other part of his season last season is that he was competing by the end of the season with Leandro Trossard, who had a quite extraordinary year, really, and scored again for Belgium the other day. So he's carrying that form into the summer.
Good for him. And that competitiveness and competition will hopefully see Martinelli raise his game, because he'll want to get back in the team, and he's just going to have to produce to do that. Arsenal willing to accept £10 million for Kieran Tierney is the story doing the rounds, or one of the stories doing the rounds. And we had a discussion about him last week. Does that seem like fair market value to you? And how valuable would it be for Arsenal if Kieran Tierney had a really good time at the Euros?
It could be great, couldn't it? I think he's going to play as a left centre-back. I'm not entirely sure with Scotland, because obviously they've got Andy Robertson as well. But it would be great if he could. They play the opening game, don't they, against Germany on Friday night. Starring performance from Kieran Tierney probably be a good thing for his market value. Yeah,
hopefully.
That 10 million figure, it doesn't sound crazy to me, I have to say. I know we paid significantly more than that, but if you look at his injury record and factor in that he's probably on a very healthy salary as well, signed a contract extension not that long ago, really.
No, he's got contract to 2026.
So I think, I mean, that feels like 10 million we couldn't get last summer, So I would probably be in mind to take it. But who knows? It'd be nice if we could get more.
Yeah. I think there are other factors, of course, in the decision making when it comes to Kieran Tierney. The injuries, as we talked about last week, that is going to be a factor for any club that's interested. So how much money do you gamble on a player who might well be, on his day a very good fullback, but then you're constantly in this cycle of injury recovery, and then what that means for a player's ability to perform at the level you want, So you get in.
It's the danger of the loan, isn't it? It's like, in theory, a loan is done, well, probably because you can't find a buyer, but the hope is it will demonstrate the player's reliability and value. And I would say it almost feels like a toss of a coin at times whether that actually happens, or maybe more often than not, that isn't what happens.
Yeah.
And in Tierney's case, he has had, I think, 3 injuries this season.
Yeah.
2 of which were fairly significant. And it's like, well, I'm not sure how much it's helped. Now, if there was no buyer last summer, then what could we do? But I'm not sure that loan has put us in a much better position this time around.
Yeah. We didn't, obviously, last week we recorded on Tuesday, and then there was a fairly significant story during the week about Manchester City taking legal action against the Premier League. So we had a little question here from John Foster on the Discord. He said, "Morning, chaps. It seems like old news now, but do you see City's legal action against the Premier League as evil genius or last throw of the dice?" And, what do you make of what they're doing, and maybe the implications of what they're doing as well?
Yeah, this case is all about associated party transactions, isn't it? And City's belief that they are unlawful. The current rules around them are unlawful and anti-competitive. And they are subject to, I think, was it the tyranny of the majority?
Yes.
Which I found quite an extraordinary phrase. particularly because we're going through a general election in this country, I was like, well, democracy is kind of a thing, and the Premier League does sort of seem to run on democratic basis. So I'm not quite sure about that, the tyranny of the majority. But I'm not shocked by it, because I feel like they're in such a bad position with the 115 charges looming over them that they almost need to do this to kind of weaken the Premier League. I think if they are to be successful, then I think it kind of reframes the entire debate around them and the club and, you know, the charges that already stand against them. I think it's almost a PR war as much as anything else. But I think it's really important that the Premier League stand firm on this. It's no surprise the clubs that have already come out in support of City. And I just fear that, you know, if they get their way, there's kind of no end to it, really, after that.
Yeah, I mean, the clubs that have supported Newcastle, obviously, because, you know, can you imagine what they must be thinking at Newcastle? Because they are by a magnitude more wealthy, potentially more wealthy than Manchester City. So if there's no restriction on, you know, what you can pump into your club via sponsorship deals or you know, partnerships that don't have any connection to what might be considered a fair market value, you know, Newcastle could outspend every football club in the entire world. So it's no surprise they're going with them. Aston Villa, I think, Chelsea, clubs with the multi-club model also supporting Manchester City. So that includes, I think, Sheffield United, but they're gone from Premier League now. Nottingham Forest. I mean, that's another thing that should be completely outlawed, really, if you ask me, is that multi-club stuff. But, you know, this is no surprise from Manchester City.
Everton as well.
Everton, yeah. I mean,
I saw a tweet from Farteta FC, whose content I wouldn't normally engage with, I don't think, based on that. But they said Everton are like that one guy on Instagram retweeting billionaire mindset posts while they're working a 9-to-5, which I did enjoy.
That's good.
Yeah. I mean, Chelsea, obviously, you know, they want to be able to sell themselves hotels, you know. I think you're allowed to do it in Monopoly, so why should you not be allowed to do it in the Premier League? Listen, the most extraordinary thing was the reaction of the Man City fans, I found. There was that one tweet, wasn't there, from that City fan account that did the rounds.
Oh, the legal team, the legal lineup team, that one.
No. The one that was like, finally, we're sticking it to the Premier League cartel.
Oh, yeah, that one, yeah.
The level of sort of delusion.
Yeah, ignorance and just, it was depressingly stupid.
But ain't that football? That's the thing. It's like everybody is so sort of blind to their own bias, and we're probably the same. Like, I found it so depressing that could be a City fan's perspective, but then I was like, but of course it is. It's I honestly, I'm just like, and with City's sort of financial might and legal might, you mentioned the Lawyer 11,
Jesus Christ,
captained by David Panic or whatever it might be. I sort of think,
who's an Arsenal fan, apparently, isn't he?
Yeah, well, yeah. I think there's every chance that, who knows? Who knows what City might be able to pull off? And if they do, then it's like the game's gone, Andrew.
The game is gone. Yeah, Brian's gun will be able to put together a compilation of the game's gone.
Yeah,
I mean,
it'll just be me saying the game's gone over and over.
Didn't
again.
we sort of cross the Rubicon last year when Manchester City fans hung a banner at their stadium saying "Panic on the streets of London" when they were charged with this? And Panic obviously is their lawyer or their barrister, and it's a nice play on the Smiths song and everything else. But still, when you're a football club holding up a banner in support of your your club's chief barrister, something's not right. Something's not right, you know?
No, true. Although Arsenal are a club currently run by lawyers, Tim Lewis and Richard Garlick, both from a legal background. Maybe that's where the Premier League is going. Maybe everyone's got to lawyer up, guys, for what's to come. We're not going to have games anymore. We'll just settle it in court.
Yeah, nothing was ever not improved by getting lawyers involved. So
true.
VAR, the vote
it's
took
here
place.
To stay.
It took place 19-1. Wolves, I presume, were the only club that voted to scrap VAR, having brought that motion to the Premier League. But VAR is going to continue. I found some of the language around this quite interesting. If I can find what I was writing about. I can't remember where I wrote about it, probably on the blog at some point. But, the idea that we will try and make some improvements if people will just give us a bit of time. We'll try and improve the performance of the technology. I mean, is it not the most PGMOL thing of all time that automated offsides are going to be introduced to the Premier League next season, but not until October?
I know.
Like a mid-season, well, not mid-season, but a change within the season itself, which really shouldn't happen.
I don't know why that is. Maybe there's like a sale on at Dixon's in September, and that's when they're going to buy all the technology.
Buy all the gear, yeah.
I don't know. It is... that's mad. That's absolutely mad.
Yeah.
There's just no two ways about that. The laws should be the laws for the entire season.
They say that there will be reportedly better communication for fans inside the stadium, with the league hoping that replays can be shown.
Yeah.
Like, what is that? Because, whatever you think of VAR, whether you're for it, against it, somewhere in the middle, I think where everybody would agree is that the experience inside the stadium is terrible, because you're sitting there and you don't know what's happening. And I mean, there's a VAR check, but you don't know necessarily what it's for, and you don't know what they're looking at. Whereas everybody else in the entire world is watching replay after replay after replay, and they know exactly what's going on. Why are they just hoping to show this stuff inside the ground? It's not so, none of this is so incendiary that, oh, look, they've showed a replay inside the ground and now everybody is setting fire to their seats and fighting each other because they've gone crazy over what they're seeing. What is the rationale behind this?
No idea. I mean, I think they absolutely have the technology in place to do that. So, that seems to be the messaging that they're going to improve communication with the crowd by a picture, potentially via audio as well. I mean, the thing is, I will hold my hands up as saying I've been the first to complain about fans being in the dark when these decisions are being made. I have to be honest, I'm not sure I trust PGMOL or the Premier League to deliver that information in such a way that it is actually constructive and positive. I can just see an image being shown with a sort of seemingly quite randomly drawn offside or whatever, say we're still in September, and a guy, being offside by a toenail and some audio coming over saying, and fans just absolutely losing their shit. So who knows? I am fascinated to see how they're going to approach that. Clearly, I think the other clubs, beyond Wolves, recognise the sort of genie is out of the bottle at this point in time. It's here to stay. So it's got to be better.
Yeah, I don't think Wolves had any real expectation or hope that VAR would be done away with. I think what they did...
Sort of a protest, wasn't it?
Yeah,
almost?
Or just to say, look, we need to improve this. If this is here, and it is here, and, for better or worse, this is what we're going to have to live with from now on, the standards need to be improved. I think it's slightly similar to some of the comments that Mikel Arteta made about officiating last season, that they were more about raising awareness that standards need to improve and need to be better, rather than sort of going two-footed in on one particular referee or one particular decision. That I think what he always said was the communication and the comments that are made and the sort of back channel dealings that they have with PGMOL, all of it is about, let's make this better. Let's work together for the benefit of the game, because if more decisions are right across the board, then everybody's happier and people complain less. And I know, it's a slightly utopian ideal that every referee is going to get every decision right. That's not the expectation. But I think when there are significant flaws and significant problems that are manifesting themselves week after week after week, unless you start to have constructive conversations about those things, they don't improve in any way. So I think that's probably what Wolves' thing was about. The other sort of sad part of all this is that as part of these continued improvements, they're pledging to give us more Howard Webb and Michael Owen on television. I mean, come on. Nobody's asking for that.
No.
Nobody's asking for that.
I know. Is that sort of a broad overview of what's going on in Arsenal world?
I think so.
Yeah, we had lots of questions though, and we've got, lest we forget, our transfer predictions. Lest we forget.
Okay, let's take a little break here then. We'll come back, do those transfer predictions and some of your questions in part 2 right after this. Welcome back to the Arsecast Extra. This is part 2 of the show where we answer the questions that you sent to us on Twitter at Gunnerblog and at Arseblog, also on the Arseblog Discord chat server, which you get access to if you are an Arseblog member on Patreon. So when we talk about our transfer predictions, are we going to go sort of player by player or just sort of pluck a random figure out of the air, or are we going to list who we think the club are going to sell and for how much, and then who we think we're going to buy and for how much? I think that's kind of how we've done it, isn't it? We've sort of said, I think we'll sell this guy for this much and that guy.
We'll do ins and then outs, I guess. I think it's probably the way.
Okay.
And if you know, because you might be like, I think we'll buy a right back for 20 million, but you might not know who it is.
Yeah, I definitely don't know who it is. I've got no idea. You're the guy who knows who it is, and I don't think even you know who it is.
Exactly. And obviously, we stake our entire reputations on the line here, right?
100%.
If we're a pound out, we are finished as a podcast.
We're finished. We're over. That's it.
Dead podcast.
Yeah, dead podcast. Washed podcast.
Washed. Fraud.
Washed.
Fraudulent podcast.
Yeah, this is it. Okay, well, look, in terms of, are we starting with ins or outs?
Let's start with ins. It's more exciting, isn't it?
It is. So, I think we'll buy a forward...
Yeah.
For pounds.
Let's do pounds.
60 million.
Okay.
Because that's sort of what they're talking about with Sesko, and that seems to be about the only thing that's going on. And I don't think we'll go above that anyway. So given that that's sort of, the thing right now, that seems an obvious one to me.
Yeah. I think... I'll go slightly under. I'll go 55 because I think that's about what his release clause is in pounds.
Right.
I don't... Listen, I'm not saying it's definitely going to be him, but he's the one that Arsenal have done the most work on. He's sort of, foremost in their minds. They're not the only club who want him, and he has an offer to stay in Germany, and there won't be a shortage of takers next summer either, I imagine. But I think that is the sort of price bracket that we'll buy a forward in. So even if it's not Sesko, I think it'll be around that figure.
Okay, I think we're going to buy a left back for £23 million. That's what that's what I came up with over the weekend when I was working hard on this.
Okay, I am going to say I think we won't end up buying one. Yeah.
Right.
People are going to hate my predictions, I suspect.
All right.
But I think that we won't find the guy for the right money or move on enough people. I think it's maybe a job we won't get to. Okay. There's always a job you don't get to, Sure. And I think that might be the one. Or one of the ones.
One of the ones. Okay, we're going to buy a goalkeeper for 12 million.
Okay. That sounds about right.
Right.
I mean, I wrote 15.
Okay.
I just think we don't get a lot for, footballers cost money these days, don't they? Quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I think we need someone decent. We'll have a lot of games. And we need to go far in the cups. Like, part of City's success, I think, in recent years has been Ortega being able to take Ederson out and have a really good keeper there. And, I remember when Ortega joined City, a few people said to me, Arsenal have missed one there. He was on a free transfer and he's top quality keeper, could have come in and been a great, competition, backup, brilliant player. And they were right. Now, he was free, but I think that was a sort of unusual deal. I think we're going to have to spend about 15 to get someone decent.
Right. Okay, yeah, so we're not too far apart.
So
on
far,
that
we're similar. You've got a left back, and I'm not so sure. Right.
Do you think we're going to buy a midfielder? Because I think we'll buy a midfielder, but I don't know what midfielder it's going to be. Because the more you hear about what might go on in terms of who's going to leave or not leave, the more you might think buying a six when you've got Reiss, Partey and Jorginho at your club is probably not exactly what you want to do, even if you can play Declan Rice further forward. And with doubts over the likes of Fabio Vieira and Emile Smith-Rowe as more likely departures than anyone else, I wonder if we might need to buy a more 8 adjacent midfielder than a 6. So I'm going to say we're going to spend 40 million on a midfielder.
Okay. I've got 50 written down.
Right.
So again, not far away from each other. I think it might be more of a 6. I think in an ideal world, they'd like someone who could sort of do a bit of both. Because I don't think they're committed to a decision on Declan Rice at this point in time in terms of where he's going to play.
Is Douglas Luiz a guy who could do a bit of both?
Yeah, he is, absolutely. And Villa, I think, might need to sell him. I know there's been some reporting about that from Brazil, and I understand there's some truth to that. But I kind of feel like he had his time. He had his chance with Arsenal, and we pushed the boat out quite far, and it didn't happen. I don't know that we would go back, but it would be a fit. It would be a fit. So, yeah, and again, I wonder if he would cost more than the figures we're talking about here. But
yeah, maybe.
I think we'll spend about £50 million on a central midfield player, which is a lot of money.
Yeah.
And someone like Zubimendi would be in that kind of bracket in terms of price. So, yeah, that's my current feeling.
Right. And do you think there might be any other business, anything else?
I've got one other thing.
Right.
I've got like a £10 million. I've written random deal Marquinhos type.
Right.
Like a guy who probably we haven't heard of, who's probably not a first team consideration straight away, but is bought for his potential.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe it'll be someone who shines at the Euros, or it could be anything. But I just have a feeling there, and that's it for me on incomings. I did think long and hard about it because I know people want more than that. I know people want a left back and people want a wide forward, but I think you'll see when I get to my outgoings why I've maybe been a bit more conservative. Did you have anything else?
I had a similar. I just had like 8 million with a big question mark beside it because I didn't know what the player might be or who it might be. It might be somebody young, maybe somebody from the Championship, maybe somebody from abroad who, has the potential to become something, but I don't know what position or where it might be. Wouldn't surprise me 100% if it was, like you say, a wide player, not like Marquinhos, but maybe somebody who's just very, very fast.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my sort of wild card pick.
Right. So I just did the numbers there very quickly. and then my calculator went off. So I'm just doing it again. Plus 12, plus 40, plus 8. So I've got us spending 143 million, and you have
I've got 130, I think.
Right, 50-50, 55, 130 million. So, okay. We're sort
Similar
of
ballpark, really.
In the ballpark, yeah.
Right, let's do departures. How do you want to do it? Do you want to do it by player?
I think so.
Yeah, I think that'll be the most interesting way to listen to, I suspect. So should we go through?
Yeah, it's whether or not, some of the players who might leave are going to be sales or something else,
Yeah.
Because
and that's where it gets interesting.
So I think there are going to be some players who definitely get sold.
Okay, do you think Eddie Nketiah is going to be sold?
Yes.
I agree. How much do you think he'll be sold for?
15 million. 15 would be my maximum.
Wow.
Because we've had the discussion. We've had the discussion about the salary and how that kind of salary not precludes you from going to another club, but becomes part of the deal or the factor or something you have to factor in when it comes to the transfer fee. Like, if you want to move the player on, but the club who wants him can't afford the wages that you've given him, that is something where the compromise has to come from our side. So that's why I think 15 million for Eddie is probably what we're going to get.
Okay. I hear you. I think you might be right, but I'm going to go higher because...
Okay. I hope you're right.
I mean, Eddie's one I always find really difficult. You could persuade me on any value between about 10 million and about 30. And I could find a case where I'd be like, yeah, I could believe that. I mean, the value of all these players is sort of, we can project whatever we want onto it, but it's ultimately what a club's prepared to pay, right? And so we are plucking these out of the sky. I'm going to say 22. 22.
Okay. Well, I hope obviously you're right.
I hope I'm right, but yeah, I mean, I think they've been reporting that Arsenal would like 30.
Well, yeah, I'm sure they would.
I don't see us getting to that. I do wonder if it's a deal where can we build in something as well that protects us a little bit, maybe like a sell on or maybe a...
Sure.
If he scores X many goals, do you know what I mean? Like add-ons that might
clauses.
A make the deal more palatable publicly in terms of the figure that we're able to say that it cost, and B, perhaps more importantly, just give us a bit of protection if he goes somewhere and hits the ground running and scores loads of goals. Okay, what about Emile Smith-Rowe?
Right, I have him going as well.
Same.
And I wrote 20 million for Emile Smith-Rowe.
Yeah.
And I think that's half of what we would have got 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But I think we have to look at the 2 years that he's had.
I wrote 25, so not very different.
Right.
And again, at points in my hastened scribblings, I think it was lower than that. But I think 25 is plausible. Yeah, who knows? I think if it's lower than that, I think if it's lower than 20, you're going to have some upset Arsenal fans.
For sure. But, this is what makes this part of it so difficult, is that we've not been traditionally great sellers. So until such time as we can establish a sort of baseline value for the deals that we will do. Like all the while I was sitting here thinking about the players that we're going to sell. And then I thought about what we sold Bernd Leno for.
Yeah.
An international
wasn't it a bag of old mothballs or something?
Yeah. It was like 3 million or 1 million with, I don't know. It was bad. And I accept, you're driven by the market and all that, but it's still a terrible deal. And it sort of has made me think, every time I've come up with a figure for a player to go a little bit lower.
You have to apply the Bernd-Leno rule.
The Bernd-Leno edict to all of this.
The reality that we're probably just going to pay all these people off. Okay. Well, but the thing is, while we may look at these figures and be underwhelmed, the money that we're talking about there, in both our cases, for Smith Rowe and Nketiah, is probably buying you a new midfield player.
Well, that's it. I mean, there's so many that it might just add up to a reasonable summer because there are other players. Do you think Reiss Nelson is going to be sold?
No.
I
think he'll be loaned. I don't think there'll be a buyer at the right price.
Right. I had 5 million for Reiss Nelson.
Oh, 5 million, sure. No, I don't know. I've said loan because I'm not sure. But 5 million. I mean, I don't think people are going to like that 5 million, Andrew.
Why not? What do they expect?
Shouting at us.
Genuinely, what do they expect?
Well, it's more, I guess.
Well, I mean, really, he started one Premier League game in 4 years. What do people realistically expect to get for Reiss Nelson?
Maybe like an M&S gift voucher or something.
Maybe so. Maybe I'm being too cynical or too negative on this, but
we'll find out, won't we, on transfer deadline day when it's all said and done. Yeah. We'll be able to know: are we cynical, or are we in fact the Nostradamus of transfer predictions?
Who knows? We will find out in due course.
I suspect we're not.
Who else have you got on your outgoing?
Kieran Tierney.
8 million.
Okay. I've said 10 just because 10 was, what was reported recently and what was discussed. I've got no idea, but I've said 10. I think his buy option for Sociedad was like 20 or so. And they were obviously like,
no,
we're not going to do that.
No.
So it's going to be less than that. I think we can be sure.
Albert Sambi-Lokonga.
8 million, I've said.
8 million. I had 10 million for Sambi. I don't know. I mean, is that completely at odds
he's
with...
young. He's a good age.
He's
got a cool name.
Yeah. Nuno Tavares.
3. I've written 3.
I had written 4 for Nuno Tavares.
You've always rated him, so...
So let me I'm just writing yours down here. Sambi, you have... What did you... 8?
8 for Sambi, 3 for Nuno.
Tavares... 3. You don't think we'll get anything for Nelson?
Aaron Ramsdale?
I don't think we'll sell him.
Yep. Nor do I. I've written loan.
You could get a loan fee, but we can't speculate on what that loan fee might be. But I saw a story over the weekend that Arsenal were looking for 35, 40 million for Aaron Ramsdale, which seems high to me considering the trajectory of his last 12 months or so. So
yeah, I mean, I'm sure Arsenal feel like, well, we paid 30 and since then he's an England international and all these things. I'm sure that's what their position is. But every club looking knows he's got to go because it's not really a sustainable situation. Mm-hmm. I don't see him staying at Arsenal in any circumstance, to be honest with you. Like, I find that I think that's a very small probability because I just don't think it's good for him. It's not really even been very good for David Raya.
It's not good for Arsenal.
No, but equally, I really struggle to see someone paying that kind of money. I mean, I think Newcastle a few weeks ago, for a bit of insight, were the front runners. But then United winning the FA Cup meant they were not in Europe anymore. And obviously that had budgetary effects, but also meant they didn't have the games to offer another goalkeeper because they got Nick Pope already. So they can't really rotate keepers. So now they need more of a straight number 2 on a straight number 2 salary.
Yeah.
And I think they've made a bid for James Trafford from Burnley for about 15 million. And I think they'll probably do that deal. So that's one option gone straight away this early in the summer. And I just think a lot of clubs are going to be frightened off by that asking price. And
the fact he signed a new deal last May and got a good pay rise.
A week, which makes him one of the better paid goalkeepers in the division.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I don't think we'll sell him. So I didn't have him down as a sale.
I've got loan.
Right.
So yeah, so that's that one. And then who else have you got? The rest are all, I think, unless I'm missing anyone obvious.
I mean, I thought about Fabio Vieira, but I don't think Arsenal can let both Vieira and Smith Rowe go in one summer. And I think the Smith Rowe situation is probably the one which will come to a conclusion.
What about the Jesus and Zinchenko pair? Do you see anything there? I
had Zinchenko going.
Yeah.
I had Zinchenko going for, and I wrote down, this might make people laugh considering some of my other valuations, but I did have him down for 20 million somewhere.
No, I actually think that would be quite cheap, to be honest. I know he's a bit older and I know he's only got 2 years left, but he is a quality player. And so I've got him staying, and that's why I've not got us signing a left back.
Right. What about Kivior? Do you see him go?
Well, yeah. So with Zinchenko, I think the club would like to sell him, and they haven't offered him a new deal, and he's 2 years out. So you can make your own inferences from that. I just am not sure. He's such a specific player that I don't know how many clubs are potential buyers.
But is he that specific? Is he like, has the last sort of 18 months not really shown us that he's not really a left back? He's a guy that if you put him in as a left 8 or even as a 10, he's got the ability to play there. And you don't have to worry that much about the defensive aspect of his game because, he's not a left back. He's not having to keep an offside line or anything like that. I think.
Yeah, maybe that's the better move for him to go and play midfield somewhere. I've got one eye on Chelsea. I've got no information about this other than I know that their new manager, Maresca, is big on inverted fullbacks. And Chilwell, that's not really who he is. Cucurella's been mostly bad for them. And I could see, Zinchenko's happy in London. I think if that came up, that would make some sense.
Right.
But I've got it not coming up, and I've got him staying for another year. And then Kivior, I've literally got in brackets. Like, I don't think there'll be a buy for Jesus. I think he'll stay.
I don't think we should sell Jesus, by the way.
Well, there you go. And neither of us had a fancy new wide forward. No. So I think that makes keeping Jesus even more appropriate.
What about Partey?
I completely forgot about him.
Well, I'd like to sell him, but I don't know from the noises anyway so far that he doesn't want to go. And, it will depend what's on offer and how much Arsenal might be prepared to incentivize his departure.
Yeah, I'm going to say he's going to go.
Yeah,
I genuinely forgot that he was alive briefly. I'm going to say he's going to go for 12 million.
12 million, okay. I don't think he'll go, so I'm not going to. I don't have him written down.
Kivior, I'm really tempted to put Kivior down because I think if someone comes and offers us 30 million for Kivior, I think we'll take it. And again, that could precipitate the signing of a left back. But as it stands, I'm not going to put it. But it's my sort of sneaky one to watch, if that makes sense. What about you?
I think you're right that if somebody did offer us 30 million for him, we would take it.
Yeah.
But I don't know that anyone's going to offer 30 million.
I mean, again, if he has a good Euros, that could happen.
Maybe so.
And there's reports in Italy of, people following him, and his reputation there is really strong. And I just have the hunch that, again, he's not a player who needs to go, who we're desperate to get rid of or anything like that. But it might be one of those where someone comes in, offers you a little bit of profit on a player, and you think, this is the right time. Yeah, let's do it.
Could be.
But for now, I've actually not got it in. So, okay. Yeah, shall I count mine and you count yours?
I added them up.
Oh, right, you've done it already.
Yeah, so 82 million for me and 80 for you.
Oh, wow, incredibly close.
Yeah, very close considering there's some, significant differences in players that we think are going to leave.
I mean, so someone could say to that, Andrew, are we being way too conservative in that if you look at what we've spent in recent summers, our net spend has been,
huge,
over 100 million, right? Over 200 million sometimes. Do we think I don't know, why would it suddenly pull right back in?
Well, look, the only thing I would say, I've explained why I think, some of my valuations are quite low, is because we don't have the reputation of being a club that sells particularly well. What I would caveat that with is I accept that we were selling players from teams who weren't anywhere near as good as this current team. And if you were surplus to requirements at Arsenal 4 years ago, it's because you couldn't get into a team that was not good. And that obviously has an impact on your value. If you're surplus to requirements at Arsenal now, it's because you can't get into a team that's really good. And that might well have an impact on what people are prepared to pay.
Yeah. And if we sell a bunch of players for, twice what you and I have predicted, then obviously there'll probably be at least one more signing.
Yeah.
It will facilitate that. But yeah, I mean, honestly, we did not pre-discuss it. I know we speak every week, so I guess we both know what the other think, but we have ended up with very similar figures there. So I'll be curious to see. Arsenal, I think, have really exceeded our expectations in terms of expenditure in the last few summers. But I just don't know if I see that being sustained this year. And I know people are like, well, City will still be City. We've got to keep spending to keep competing with them.
Of course, yeah.
I know that's true, but, we're probably talking about adding, a quality striker, a quality midfielder. I think that will help us, but we shall see. I've seen some, whenever I hop over to Twitter, there are these extraordinary lists of the bare minimum Arsenal need is Isak, Guimaraes,
yeah,
Alphonso Davies, and and I'm just like, that ain't happening.
Yeah. No, I think you're right, and I think Arteta has said, he's got to get more out of the players that we have, and I think one thing maybe we do have to acknowledge or accept is that when you put together a young team, and that's something that people have liked about what we've done and how we've done it, is you put together a young team, relatively young, of course, part of the reason you do that is so they can grow and develop and realize the potential that they have collectively and individually. So at some point you have to lean into that rather than the sort of balls to the wall spending, which, builds you that squad in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're so close as well. That's the thing. We are so close now. It's tiny, tiny margins. And the other thing that we should mention, and I promise I'm not just doing happy clappy club PR here, but Jurrien Timber is a name that we should be talking about in this context as a player who genuinely is. I almost don't want to say it.
He's
buzzers at the ready, but he's like a new signing. That is a massive deal, I think. Really, 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 really important to have him back and available. So yeah, let's see. I hope we get at least one more player in than I've predicted, and I hope we sell at a higher price. But
yeah, me too.
That's how I feel right now.
That's it. And we'll see how wrong we are on August 31st or September the 1st when the transfer window closes. I mean, here is a question from the Discord moving on. John Larkin, who says, do you like the way Arsenal are so tight-lipped when it comes to transfers as opposed to other clubs such as Chelsea, who appear to have news outlets reporting on every time someone makes a cup of tea over there? Yeah, I mean,
I suppose I should say no, really, as a reporter.
It would be much better for you if they were. But then...
I was thinking about it, actually, and, Arsenal are capable... Someone asked a question about, can Arsenal pull a surprise in the transfer market? Are they capable of it? Who was it? Yeah, Matt Taylor. Morning, gents. Is it possible for clubs to operate quietly in the transfer market? Journalists and ITKs are so well connected. It seems keeping targets, deal progression, etc. under wraps is very tricky to do. But I think Arsenal are about as good as it gets, really. I mean, I would cite the Jakub Kiwior deal as one that I don't think anybody called until it was basically done. Fabio Vieira.
Yes, that's true. Another one.
We woke up to a report from Portugal that the price was agreed. I don't think his name had been mentioned. So I got to take my hat off to them there. They do their work quietly in the background at times. I also think, and this might be sort of showing my hand a little bit too much, but I think there was a time where it was more helpful to Arsenal and people working at Arsenal for their strategy to be known. So if you think back to like 2021, Arsenal had that big pivot summer where they went after all those young players, 6 signings under 23, I think it was. And actually, like, in terms of sort of sources and getting information, I think people were probably more forthcoming at that time. And now I think, with hindsight, that makes perfect sense because they had a strategy they needed to be communicated so that the fans understood what the club was doing. Whereas now they're operating at such a sort of high, fine level that I think it's absolutely right they keep things under wraps as much as possible. And, this is a club that have had difficult experiences in the last 18 months with people coming after players they've wanted. I mean, Mudryk, Declan Rice, both of those Arsenal felt they were in super strong positions on, and they became a tug of war. And I think anything that Arsenal can do to avoid that outcome happening again, I suspect they think it's already happening again a little bit on their main centre forward target. They should do so. Yeah. I think it's a good thing. And anything that I report is well sourced and verified. But I'll be completely honest and say I think Arsenal are operating a tighter ship this summer, and I think that's positive.
Yes, I agree. I mean, we, from a sort of fan experience point of view, the information is great, because it is exciting to consider what this player might bring, what that player might bring. But if Arsenal can get the right deals done while keeping us in the dark, if it's the right player, I'm more than happy with that, to be honest.
Yeah.
More than happy.
Nice to wake up to a surprise.
Yes. I
had those Saka questions, actually, but we did those in part 1. Morning, gents. Oh, well, yeah, let's talk about this. Johnny Bow, we touched on it. Morning, gents. What are your thoughts on keeping Fabio Vieira? High praise when he joined and looked to gem early on, but plagued by injuries. Do you feel there's a world where he kicks on this season after a full pre-season with us and a better route to the first team with a clear outcome? I think that means.
I think we've talked about this. I think, the beneficiary of Emile Smith-Rowe's departure is Fabio Vieira. I do wonder if...
I think it is one of two, isn't it?
Yeah, it can't be both. I don't think it can be both in a season, in one summer. So the door is still open for him. Do I see a world in which he really kicks on? At the moment, no, to be honest. I think there's a good player there. I think technically he is good. And he was certainly somebody that Mikel Arteta was, very keen to talk up and very keen to give chances to. And that changed. So, I mean, look, it's down to the player and it's down to, I suppose, the manager to an extent as well to give him those chances. I would be surprised if he really kicked on the way people wanted, but I think the possibility is there. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. I think I agree. I think he probably will end up staying, and I don't see it working long term. Would love to be wrong. Do you know what? I don't want to see him playing on the wing anymore. I really don't want to see that.
No.
Like, when he comes on the right-hand side, genuinely, I sometimes feel like, well, that's that for that flank for this game, because he's not going in behind, and, you know, I just don't think that's his position.
No.
So I want to see him get minutes, proper minutes in those central areas. I still feel like our system is not quite right for him. I think like a lot of his best games in Portugal were as a sort of second striker, you know, in like more of a 4-4-1-1 shape. And I just feel that the Martin Odegaard, Declan Reiss positions in our team require more of an all-round game than Fabio Vieira has. So I don't see it happening. But I've been a big advocate of his talent. You know, I think he's got a great eye for goal. I think he makes final third contributions. I'm just not quite sure what, you know, if we played with like a proper number 10, then I'd be like, okay, but we don't really.
We don't, yeah.
And I think that's where he'll end up somewhere.
Do you think he can, you know, be the Odegaard?
No, I don't think he can. I just don't think he's got the off the ball side to his game to do that role.
Yeah.
Annoyingly. But I'd love to be wrong. Love to be wrong.
There was a question.
There's one thing I love, Andrew. It's being
wrong. Well, look, we're both very good at it, particularly when it comes to anything that involves
in the game.
Numbers. If it involves numbers, we're as wrong as it gets. Speaking of which, Arteta's Red Army on Twitter, who's at Arsenal23 Wenger, he says something about somebody called Hamill coming in from Scotland, and he's talking about Star Wars jokes. I had a quick look. Apparently there's a young defender from St. Johnston who's going to come in. He's like 15 or 16. But he says in this, Per Mertesacker has a £30 million budget for reserves and youth teams. Will we see an expensive youth signing soon? That seems like a lot. That seems like a lot.
Sounds like a lot. And I can't say whether that's true or not. Yeah, interesting question. I mean, we've lost a number of young players this summer. A lot of contracts have expired. Ruel
Walters.
Yeah, he's gone.
Is he gone?
Is he gone? That's the question. The indications were that he was leaving, and Arsenal apparently saying they're still in talks. He was pretty set on it. So
didn't he do a goodbye type thing?
Yeah. Like, I almost wonder if that's kind of like
just an administrative type thing.
Yeah, or is it a thing where Arsenal, like, in order to claim compensation when he joins another club, do they have to have made him an offer?
Right.
Something like that.
I get you.
Because I think, as far as he's concerned, he's going, unless there's a late change of heart. Mario Koza-Dubry, that one is ongoing. You know, they're still talking to him, I think, about trying to find a resolution.
Karl
Hein, still talking to him. But at the level below that, you know, a number of young players have been released. It might be a question of sort of having to bring players in to kind of beef up those academy teams as well as finding kind of first team prospects. So yeah, I don't know that I guess you'd almost class that as kind of separate though to sort of first team transfer activity. I doubt it'll be anything like 30 million though.
Yeah, same.
I very, very much doubt that.
That's a lot. That's a big budget. So
yeah,
maybe,
maybe 10, but I'd be really surprised if it was as high as 30.
What about this one from Andrew Allen? Familiar name. Morning, chaps. Arsenal have only organised 2 pre-season friendlies so far when they usually play 5 or 6. If you could pick the remaining opponents, who would they be and why?
Fun question. I mean, we're expecting at least 2 more friendlies, right? We're expecting another one in the US.
There was a rumor about that one. It was maybe supposed to happen in LA, but it might happen further north in California, from what I hear. But I don't quite know.
Well, so there's that, and then there's the possibility of something akin to an Emirates Cup style day or friendly, because we're not in the Community Shield. I think part of the reason that's not planned is we had to wait to find out if we were going to be in the Community Shield.
Yeah.
Had City won the FA Cup, we would have been. So that's at least 2 more that are expecting to be added. Who would I like to see us play? That's a good question. I don't like seeing us play people like United and Liverpool. I really don't like it.
Yeah, I don't like games against other Premier League clubs. I'm going
to be there, by the way, in the US.
Yeah, we'll be there. We'll be there,
all right.
But, and keep your eyes peeled, by the way, for information on an event in Los Angeles, a live pod event with something pretty cool surrounding it as well. So keep your ears and eyes open for that. But to me, it's like playing a Premier League club in Europe. I really just dislike it on a visceral level.
Yeah, I really do as well. But then who do you want to see us play? Like, do you want to see us play Barcelona and Real Madrid? Or do you want to see us play
Colchester,
a team of Austrian villagers like we used to?
Yes. Who do I like? I don't really care beyond the fact that we don't play Premier League clubs.
I used to like being a sort of northwest of London boy. I used to like it when Arsenal would like turn up to Barnet and Boreham Wood with like the first team squad.
Yeah.
And win like 7 or 8-0, and just everyone had a lovely time. I enjoyed those days of pre-season. But you don't really get a lot of that anymore.
Do you not, miss something in terms of the competitive nature that you need to what Mikel Arteta might decide is necessary for his team is more competitive action rather than, like you say, playing the Austrian villagers or a lower league team.
No, I completely get that. But as a fan, it was like always fun to see a team in that setting, and sort of also just like in the summer, what do you want? You want to watch your team in their new kit, and you want your new signings to play well and score.
That's it.
And you get good chances of that if you're playing minnows effectively.
Yeah.
So I think that you want, my sort of dream pre-season would be, probably like one of those pre-seasons from the early noughties where like you've got a bit of glamour, like the Amsterdam tournament, say, where, you're playing like Ajax and Inter Milan or something. Mm-hmm. But then you've also got Boreham Wood and Barnet to kind of round it out and give you like a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
What's your dream pre-season opposition?
Dream pre-season opposition.
Come over to Dublin, I guess, for a friendly.
They did that, but they played Chelsea.
Yeah.
They did that. Play a League of Ireland team, something like that.
Quite fun.
Well, that would be quite fun. But yeah, I think you're right. Those kinds of games where you're not worried too much about whether you're going to win or not. It's like, how many are you going to score? They tend to be a bit of fun. But I suppose
fun. They're fun to watch, fun to talk about.
Yeah.
I saw one of the replies to Andrew Allen, which from Arteta's Red Army on Twitter, said, "Bring Celtic to the Emirates Cup. They have a huge following in London, and the Irish mingle in all the Irish-run Arsenal pubs. Great atmosphere for a friendly." That would be, to get one of the old firm sides down, I think would be quite a
you could make a good
friendly
case for that, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
I suppose, and I guess Celtic, sure, with all the Irish pubs, but also
we could just give them Kieran Tierney on the way home.
Slip them into their bag, see if they know. And but Arteta's connections to Rangers as well. A friendly at Ibrox, that could be an interesting one.
I suppose if there is an Emirates Cup type thing, though, you need attractive opposition for people to buy the tickets, because I'm not sure, even if we've got lovely new signings and a nice new kit, that you're going to sell 60,000 for a game against Barnet.
No.
With all due respect to Barnett, I think it'll probably be somebody continental. Like you wonder, who do we seem to play a lot? Like Lyon and Monaco and Sevilla and those kinds of things. I've got it.
Go on.
I've got it. Real Oviedo, Santi Cazorla, back at the Emirates to play, to say the goodbye and to get the goodbye that he never got a chance to say in person, and to get the ovation from the Arsenal fans that he deserves for his time at the club. He was talking about that during the week, actually, talking about staying in contact with Arteta and the door still being open for him at Arsenal, but he's obviously concentrating on what's going on at Real Oviedo at this moment in time. That would be a good one, no?
Yeah, I think that would be, actually. And I should have said he's on my transfers in list as well, Santi Cazorla.
1.25 million.
Yeah. Anything else, Andrew?
No, the only question that I have now is the fact that Arseblog was a question.
Oh, I saw this.
This is a TV show called The Chase, and Arsenal fan Bradley Walsh, who you might remember from the It's Only Ray Parlour video, he was asking a question of Dermot O'Leary, another Arsenal fan, on ITV show The Chase. This is how it went down.
Arseblog.com is a website mainly dedicated to what football team? Correct.
I mean, it wasn't a difficult question, but I'm glad Dermot O'Leary got it right with a smile on his face. I mean, I don't watch this show, The Chase, but I believe from the responses I've had, it's very, very popular because people are going, wow.
It's a big deal.
You're a question.
I think it's one of those quiz shows that started as like a daytime show and was so popular it became a primetime show.
Right.
The ultimate compliment.
Right.
And yes, the format is that you have to answer a number of questions, essentially in a race to get home against an elite level quizzer.
Right.
They all have like personas.
So what it's like? Is it like celebrities versus these quiz people?
No, it can be. I think this is obviously a celebrity edition, but normally it's just your average punter, and like they've all, and it's like today you will face, and then it's like the Beast because there's like one who's like 6'5" and a bit fat, and he's called the Beast or something, and then there's like they've all got names like the Baron. Or they've got gimmicks essentially.
Johnny Quiz-a-Lot.
Yeah, you will face. And there was a guy who he was a contestant and he won the competition. He became one of the sort of gladiator style ultimate quizzes. I don't know what he's called though. The Mega Nerd. You will face the Mega Nerd. And then like they come down and there's smoke. It's cool.
Right. Well, there you go. That was cool. I enjoyed that.
It was. Congratulations. You've made it, Andrew.
I am literally a question. So, or the website, rather, I should say, is literally a question. All right.
If Arseblog is the answer, what is the question?
What is the question? And, there is, I think, scope for getting it wrong, but not if you are an Arsenal fan, to be fair. Right. I think we should leave it there. We've done everything we said we were going to do. We did our predictions. We did other things. So I don't know what more people want. What more do they want from us?
Just have at our predictions, guys. And I'm sure you will, but let us know what you think.
Yeah, or don't.
Don't hold back.
No, or do.
Well, yeah. Hold back a little bit.
Just a little bit.
We're only human.
Be kind.
We're just humans saying numbers.
Making things come out of our mouth.
Ask AI what Arsenal are going to buy. We should have done that, actually.
Should have done that. Chat GPT or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it will probably just say, I can't predict the future.
That's what Edu's doing in his office.
Got Chat GPT up.
Mikael's like, what's going on? And he's like, and he's just typing.
Edu is like, who is a good player?
Who is striker?
Who is good striker?
He's been too busy on the barbecue.
I'd love a good barbecue, but the weather's been shit, so...
That's it. That's when we'll know the summer has started, when we see Edu has got the grill fired up.
I've gone into Google, who is good striker? And the first thing it gives me is Harry Kane. So, fuck that. All right, we'll leave it there. As ever, thank you so much for being with us. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you a bit later in the week. We'll have a regular Arsecast for you. We'll also be starting our coverage of the European Championships for our Patreon members. That will start, obviously, when the European Championships start on Friday, so stick with us for that. In the meantime, take it easy, and we will catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye.